Sarah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So, I'm looking forward to this conversation today, Sarah, because we're going to be talking about how brands tell stories. But before we do that, you're the founder of Braud Creative. And
That's right.
how did you get there? What was your journey like? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh man, it's not a straight through journey, but started off in teaching, and I taught for 15 years English to international students, and then I got a master's in creative writing, kind of to add to that, and then from there I realized that I had to pay off some student loans and realized very quickly that writing does not make very much money. So I decided to parlay that into social media marketing. So I used my creative writing background to help companies communicate to their audiences over social media. And then we got acquired by another digital marketing agency. And so then we started doing way more content marketing and all the good stuff that comes with digital marketing as the industry grew as well. And so then I got out on my own and began consulting. And so since then, that's what I've been doing.
Fantastic. I like
Yeah.
the idea of sort of creative writing and being able to actually learn all those very, very useful skills. But like you said, translating them into cash took you quite quickly towards the marketing avenue.
Yeah, you kind of have to kind of get a better idea of ways to make money because market writing is just not something that generates a lot of cash.
So today we're going to be talking about how brands tell stories. And I
That's
think this
right.
is something that can often be misconstrued by companies thinking that they need to embellish and tell this fairy tale of how fantastic they are and what's happening around them. For
Right.
me, from my side, I've always felt it's pretty much about just telling your story, being who you are. And, my partner and I often talk about this as we get referred to a little bit as Marmite in the UK, which is a product that if you've ever tried it or seen their advertising, you either love it or you hate it. There's no in
Right.
betweens. And we're
Right.
okay with that. But from your point of view, how does storytelling start for a business?
So I have a really kind of foundational framework that I use, and it's something promoted by a company in the U.S. called Story Brand, and Don Miller, who's a really uh, strong thought leader in this area, really came up with this simple framework for understanding how to develop your own story. And it's just based on storytelling principles and the elements of storytelling. And I basically help people communicate their story, but understanding that their brand story is really the story of their customer. So as long as they understand that the customer is the hero of their story that they're telling, then they're gonna be fine. So it always starts with that. The hero is the customer.
So this is really interesting because obviously people have heard the expressions of the customer's always right, customer comes first, etc. How,
Yeah.
when it comes to storytelling for a brand, do you help people? How would people be able to put that customer as the hero of the story?
So really it's understanding that we all walk around with our own personal journeys that we're on, and we all have our own goals and transformation that we're seeking. And so as we're walking around doing life, we are looking for solutions and products and services that are going to help us get to that goal. And so when we position our customer as the hero of the story, we start to think and put ourselves in their shoes as they're walking around and saying, "Oh, okay, what do they want? And how does my product help them get what they want?" And, usually we've got, as good storytellers, we understand that when um, when customers have a desire that they're going for, when they have this goal in mind, that often obstacles come in and stop them from achieving that. And so just like if somebody had the goal of losing 50 pounds, you know, that's a very common goal in the US. So if they have this goal that they're going to lose weight, they have all these obstacles that come and trying to thwart that goal. So whether it be fast food or, staying on the couch and watching TV or, whatever it is. So then we come in with products and we show them, oh, this is how my product can help you lose weight. And we're going to make it really easy for you. So it's really understanding and putting yourself in your customer's shoes and understanding that you solve problems for them.
I think that is something that's really important. I'd say 95% of all products or services are about solving a problem. I say 95% because there's always those sort of things that you think there's no purpose to this, or there isn't really a purpose to this, but it's a luxury item or whatever it might be, and people like it. But I do think that that idea of focusing on the problem is a really important thing, because a lot of people get carried away on the social media journey. We want to make content for social media, so they start buying stock assets and they'll create this video about how amazing their new office is or whatever it might be, and they
Right.
forget that actually the content isn't a scrapbook just for yourself to look back at 10 years later. The idea of
That's
your
right.
content is that it's supposed to engage other people, primarily your customers, your potential customers, your audience, your community. And I think that's something that can be quite hard for people to identify. Do you find that when you first start working with people, that they maybe haven't actually identified that problem solution kind of relationship that they're trying to solve?
Yeah. In fact, a lot of times when I sit down with my clients and we're starting to work on their story, I find that they haven't completely figured out that their business model. And so, helping them backtrack and go back and say, well, you know, is this a package that you're offering? What is it that you're making easy for your customer? And oftentimes we end up doing a little bit of business development first before we can get to the story piece. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think it must be something common for consultants, even for certain agencies. The amount of times where we get an email or a start of a conversation, which is, I need help with social media. And then invariably by the end of the conversation, you're like, that, no, you need help with who are you? Why are you? All of these parts of the messaging, which without having that clear, it doesn't matter how many thousands of dollars you throw at things, the offer
Right.
doesn't really connect with the audience.
Yeah. And I get a lot of customers coming to me asking for websites. And um, come to find out they don't really have brand messaging. They don't know what their packages are. They don't know the steps that people take to get that. And so, we really go back to building that message as first, because those words are what sell your product, not a beautiful website or a cute video of dogs. You know, um, you really do have to have an understanding of what your message is.
Give me 1 second, Sarah. I'm just taking the video of a cute dog off my website. I spoke to a fantastic web designer, Chris Thomas, the other day, and he was talking about the really simple idea of, your website needs to be clear, not cute. And
Mm,
he was like that, you've got 15 seconds of somebody's attention once they're on your website. And if by the end of that 15 seconds, they don't know who you are and what you do, there's no chance. Like, it doesn't matter
that's
how many cutesy videos or tools or pop-ups or whatever else it is that you're trying to do, that idea of clear messaging. And I think
yeah,
that's something that a lot of people actually struggle with. They'll dig into the weeds and try and find out of the thesaurus the best possible words to make them sound fantastically eloquent,
yeah,
when in fact what they should be doing for their audience is just to say, we do words good and stuff. And
Exactly.
it's a real problem, I think, for a lot of brands. How do you help small businesses in particular, obviously because of this show and the audience, but how do you help small businesses to help really identify that messaging in the early stages?
So I generally work with clients in a using a framework of 7 steps of going through to help them build their story. And that begins with their client avatar or their client persona. And that's the hero of their story. So you figure out who your ideal client is. And I love to name them, you know, whether it's a real person or not, but we find who's that person that you're serving that specifically needs your product, and tell us a little bit about them, you know, what age they are, where do they live, what kind of behaviors do they do, and that will that will basically launch their entire story. So from there, we talk about what is it that those customers want, and then we talk about the problems that they face. And so those problems are either external problems, um, or internal problems, or philosophical problems even. And you know, to your point about luxury items not really having solving a problem, you know, we all have, you know, these needs. And if you study psychology, you know about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And one of our needs is belonging, or you know, recognition or legacy. And while those aren't, you know, problems per se, they are something that we try to get. And you know, affiliation, we like to be affiliated with people like us, or people that we want to be affiliated with, you know, and so that helps us. So while driving a Tesla may not solve any problems, it will give you an affinity for certain groups of people. So, so then after the problem that you're solving, you you come in as the guide to the hero's journey. You know, every good movie has a guide to their to the hero's journey. Like with Star Wars, you have Luke Skywalker and Yoda, or um, Harry Potter and Dumbledore. Um, so these these heroes are on this journey, and if you position yourself as the hero, then you're in direct competition with your customer. So if you start telling your story before you tell theirs, then they think, oh, okay, so this isn't about me, so this isn't helpful. So like your example about the person coming to the graphic designer that's saying, you know, if you come to the website and it's confusing, you know, that's we call that the caveman test. You know, if we come and it's not clear who the hero is, the caveman is gone, you know. um, but yeah, so you position yourself as the guide to that hero. So by positioning yourself as the guide, you build trust with that person. So um, the way to build trust is through authority and through empathy, and saying, oh, I can really empathize with your journey and your struggle. We get it. And this is how long we've been doing this for other people. This is how the success that our other customers have experienced. So these are the other customers that we have served. So that's those credibility markers that come on your in your brand messaging, and building your story. So then after that, it's the plan. What's the plan? How are you going to help them? After you've told them how you're going to help them, then you say, hey, what what are you going to do now? You know, that first, if we don't tell people what to do next, they're not going to do it. So you have to say, here's the plan, and then this is your first step. So you tell people the first step, and then and in marketing we call that the call to action. You know, and then after that, you the end of the story. So this is all in the story arc. You know, if you studied story in the US in the 3rd grade, you know, you learned the story arc, you know, the climax of the story. And that's that call to action. Are you going to make that step or not? And then the slope down is the resolution. How the story is going to end. Is it going to end with success, or is it going to end with failure? So you've got to show both things. What happens? What does success look like for your customers? What does failure look like? And so when you can put all of those pieces of the customer's journey on paper, then you have all the elements you need to tell a really good, clear story. Instead of make it clear and not cute, we say clear before clever. So, you know, you can work on the clever later. And that's, you know, copywriting is a little bit different than creative writing. But, you know, every good writer wants to sound clever. But clarity comes before clever.
I'm going to use that against my head of content, Gareth. If you're listening to this episode, that is going to end up coming your way at some point. But yes, I think it's awesome. Clear before clever. And I think as well, clear before cute. If there's anything that's apparent to people, it's surely this idea of the clarity of it. And sometimes
Yeah.
I feel like, especially when it comes to the story, people do want to try and embellish it, or, you know, it's the we instead of the I, or it's the, you know, the team, or instead of, you know, me and John that are doing this, or whatever it might be. And I think those things are part and parcel of the authenticity for a brand, especially in those early stages. If you're a small
Yeah.
business, if you're an independent retailer, for example, or anything like that, you are who you are. You can't hide that. If somebody comes into the shop and it's just you and one other person, then it's just you and one other person, right? You don't
That's right.
have that protective bubble behind you to kind of hide behind of a website or anything else. But actually use that to your advantage. I think the story,
Absolutely.
you know, as long as you're doing exactly like you've talked about, you are looking at the problem that you're solving for particular customers, and also that you've got a clear offer as to what that equals to them. If those two things have synergy and they connect well together, that's half of the battle of trying to sell to someone online. In fact, I'd say it's probably 90% of the battle, really.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
So I have to ask this, it's completely off topic, but you said, you know, the idea of naming that hero, that audience persona.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest name you've ever given to an audience persona?
Well, I don't know about weird, but I had a writer, a writing team that was putting out a book, and before we started, we named who our ideal reader was, and it ended up being I came up with this guy who was a local businessman who kind of hit all these specific things, and so I said, okay, let's just name him Bill Lee, because that's this really you know, big business guy, local, and everybody kind of understood who he was. Well, then he later became the governor of Tennessee, and so you know, now I would love to tell Bill Lee that he was the ideal reader of this book. And yeah, so that was always fun, because we'd be like, would Bill understand that, you know, or would Bill like to read that? And so oftentimes the answer was no, so then we'd have to check it.
Okay, so focusing on small businesses, as we always do here, what are some of the ways, and I mean this by the methods, channels, medium types, or anything like that, that people can actually tell these stories?
Yeah, I think it starts with your website. And so telling that story in your website, even in your header, you know, you want to show a couple of things in your header that are major parts of your story. Number one, you want to tell them, maybe reflect who the hero is by giving a nice, a picture of a person that's smiling. And, you know, if you're thinking of your ideal customer, you know, if it's a mom, you know, you want a mom with her kids. If it's a businessman, you want a picture of a high-powered executive. But they're all, if you're going to pick a picture like that, you need something that's smiling. You know, that hits the mirror neurons in your brain. So people like to see other people smiling, and that lights up that part of your brain to say, oh, this is something that's good. So I always encourage that. And then, you know, what it is that you're offering that person needs to be very clear. And I find this when I do website audits, that's the number one problem with headers, is that what they offer is not on there. You know, they may say, you know, business solutions, but business solutions, that could be anywhere from Xerox machines to, you know, IT to, you know, marketing. So what, you know, don't use the word solutions on your website, because that doesn't clarify anything. So what is it actually that you're offering, that the exchange of goods or services for money? What is it that you're doing? So just simplify that. You know, we offer, you know, school, it's a school, or we are a, you know, auto repair service place, you know, whatever it is. And then they need to see transformation. What does transformation look like? What results will they experience if they use your product? So you're giving them that aspirational identity of what life will be like after you use your products. So your header is really boiled down into those three pieces: your ideal client, what it is you offer, and what life will look like after they use your product.
And again, we're back to this idea of clarity and being clear.
Clarity is the number one thing. And then, you know, your design and the words that you choose all come after and in support of that clarity. So good visual design is a visual representation of that clarity, or to help, you know, support that clarity.
I like that. And I think it's important that people remember the message itself is more important than how pretty it looks. I've had
That's right.
many a conversation with people that starting businesses or that have an idea to start a business. And I'll sort of keep in touch with them as they're going through that process and be like, that, how are things going? And they'll be like that, you know, nearly got my logo right. And I'll be sat there going, how long has that been now? 4 weeks? And you're like, that, right,
Yeah.
forget about your logo. Like, I didn't start my business with a logo. I started my
Right.
business and then had somebody make a logo for me. That's fine. And then it's changed 3 times between then and now. So it doesn't really make the difference. But
Right.
a lot of people don't often realize that, actually, that the messaging, who you are, what you do, is super important. It's the foundation stone that kind of everything else gets built on, and on top of that.
That's right.
And I think it's, I think it's a challenge for lots of small businesses.
It is, because oftentimes I get people coming to me, and they've already got a website and they've already got a logo, and I have to go back and say, you know, building a story after those things are already built is going to be a lot harder than starting with the story. So start right and tell your story. But, you know, don't fear if you already have a website and it's not clear. You know, you can still do some really easy things to fix it. But sometimes it is just cheaper to start over.
It's challenging though, and I recognize that. Recently we've been helping out a firm. We know the owner quite well, And we just sort of said, look, we'll give you some extra tips and advice. And it started with very simply, I recorded a Loom video and just sort of went through the website. It was like that. Look, these are the things that aren't clear to me. And if they're not clear to me and I know who you guys are, then you've got no chance of anybody else sort of understanding it either. And it's been an interesting process as we've worked with them to try and help them. But it was a case of, identify, is this page for somebody in particular? They're like that. Yes, we want to recruit people on this kind of side of things. You're like, fantastic. So why doesn't it say that that's what we want to do?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, and it sounds so simple, but when you're involved in the project, and by the way, I'm the first to admit this, I'm fantastic when it comes to our clients and everything else. I've been putting off our own website, kind of, happens in drips and drabs of a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there. I mean, it is
The
clear what we
classic
do.
cobbler kid.
Yeah. But I mean, it is perfect in the sense of it's clear in terms of what we do, and our offerings are very, very simple and outlined. But the reality is we could do a lot more work on it and everything else. We spend a lot of time doing other people's instead, which is probably something I should look into. But it's a process whereby once you're in it and you've been in it for so long, it's remarkably important to get somebody from outside of your company, your organization, and even from outside of your friends and family network. And I use that because there's nothing worse than people telling me, we tested this when we asked mum, dad, sister, brother, and a couple of other friends. They're not going to give you the reality of saying that doesn't work, or that isn't clear, or I don't understand. They're going to try their best to sort of say, yeah, this feels good. This feels all right. That looks nice. This is pretty. And I think that's something that's very hard. Sometimes we can't see the wood from the trees.
Yeah. Yeah. I often tell my customers, you can't read the label from the inside of the bottle, and so that's why you have to have somebody from the outside reading the label and saying, yeah, that doesn't make sense. And, that outsight is something that you really need help with, because there's such thing as the curse of knowledge. We understand our company, and we have a level 10 understanding of it, but people buy on a level 1 to 3. They need things boiled down and very simple. Like you said, there's so many people, so many messages that are competing for attention, that you've got 30 seconds on a website, and if there's too much text, or it's not immediately clear what it is you're offering, I'm gone.
Yep. And unfortunately, that's something that usually hits quite hard. And it's usually the reasoning behind people going, well, I get traffic to my website, but it doesn't really convert, or people don't really pick up the offer. And half of the time you get back to that and you realize it's because there's no way to know what it is that you're actually offering in the first place, or who you are to offer it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of my clients was an e-commerce client, and they wanted a video, some content, and I said, well, let's go back and look at your conversion rates on your website, and because adding more content to a website that's not converting is pointless, so I think you're right. You have to start with that, and understand, is this clear? One of the things that I offer, and I'm happy to offer to your listeners, is a free website audit, where I go and it's a clarity audit. Is your message clear? And you get points for certain sections. Is your plan clear? Is your success clear? Is it clear what it is you'll lose if you don't do business with me? Because if you don't share the consequences of not doing business with you, there's no reason to do business with you. So, I think every website deserves a clarity score.
I like the sound of that as a clarity score. I think that's quite a nice way of looking at it. And I think, again, that, I found sometimes challenging to explain to people why I think their website messaging, something in particular, doesn't work. And people can be defensive, and they shouldn't be. I'm the first one to admit, I don't think our website will ever be finished. I'll be honest. Even the day that I have it all perfectly tuned and it works the way I want it to, I'll still continue to add things and try and do new things and keep experimenting with other things. And I find that some people can get quite protective over it. You know, once you've invested those hours, that time, that effort, and then you kind of
Oh
feel
yeah.
like, well, that's not fair. You can't come in and tell me that it's not clear and it's not right. And, you know, I've even had some leads from this, and you're like, that great. But when you look at the numbers and you break it down, you can see that there's opportunities. And again, people shouldn't be scared to try something different or to test something different, or to at least, you know, see how that impacts and what people say and what people end up doing when they're on that site. And I think that's a great way of doing it. So yes, we will add a link in the show notes to your website, Clarity Score Audit. I like that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I do think, you know, even my website, it's, you know, I built it 5 years ago, and every once in a while I'll add something to it or tweak it, but it really does need an overhaul. So, you know, cobbler's kids always have no shoes, and, you know, it's the work of being in business. You know, it's really adding to or clarifying or making better what it is that you have, because your website really is many things. It's, you know, your online brick and mortar. It's it's the shingle outside of your store that says who you are and what's inside, and it's the marketing team, and it's the sales team. So, you know, if it's just there to be a pretty place for people to go, like a business card, then you're not using it for all it's worth. You know, it can be a sales team and can lead you on a journey where people buy without even talking to you.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's using these tools that we have at our disposal, and that I think we've kind of become a little bit take it for granted kind of
Right.
idea. And, you know, I've got a website, so it's fine. I don't need to do anything. And the reality is, you know, unless your website is basically converting every single person who goes onto it into a client, there's probably room for improvement, right?
That's
And I
right.
think that's something that, again, you know, every platform, the biggest in the world, are constantly developing. They're constantly changing, they're evolving, they're changing with the times, they're changing with people, they're changing with what's happening in the world, everything. And all
Yeah.
of those things are important to remember, that it is an ongoing journey. And it's not quite as easy as saying, you know, we've all done it, but you build something, it's there, and then you kind of set and forget it. And one of the biggest things, actually, when we talk to people, it's quite fun, is usually to go into their About Us page, and they'll suddenly go, oh my gosh, no, I haven't updated this for like 3 years. This isn't really even relevant anymore. And you go, yeah, again, all of these little things that we can kind of take advantage of and use, basically, like you say, get the most out of the tool. Otherwise, it's like buying the Tesla and still going to the petrol station to fill up with petrol, even though you don't need it anymore. It's pointless. You're not
Yeah,
getting that benefit out of it.
that's right.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
right.
listen, I've really enjoyed this, Sarah. Before we call it a day and go our separate ways, how can people connect with you online, and where can they find you?
I'm on all the socials. So, you know, you can find me on LinkedIn at Sarah-Bro, and then BraudCreative.com. And I'm on Twitter as Bro Knows. So, you know, find me on any social media, and I'd love to connect with you there.
I feel there's a story behind that Twitter handle.
Yeah. So in the 80s, there was a big marketing campaign using this one athlete named Bo Jackson. And I think it was a Nike campaign, and it was Bo Knows. And so everything that Bo did, you would want to follow because Bo knows. So Bro Knows is a little, you know, nod to the 80s campaign.
I love it. Fantastic. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.